it's important to remember Margaret's commitment to peace and justice because there aren't really enough people like her, or people like all of us, who will show up and take risks to try to create a world that's more peaceful and just. And so, oftentimes we have to do this in the face of many obstacles, and it often feels like a steep climb to try to face off against the many forces that perpetuate wars and oppression in our world. Margaret was a brave and passionate woman who followed her husband to Iraq with small children in tow, despite her longing to be with her family in America. She and her husband and children were impacted by the many political and military upheavals in the Middle East, which probably contributed to her passion and commitment to peace and justice efforts. Margaret was a steadfast member of the peace community in Kalamazoo. She showed up for meetings and events as long as her health would allow, well into her late 80s, even though she often had to take the bus. I remember being really impressed by her willingness to take the bus as an older woman, who was beginning to look kind of frail. She would still show up to KNOW meetings and events. It really was impressive to me. Margaret also had loving and devoted children, and she undoubtedly passed on her commitment to peace and justice to them as well. So today we're going to have a short program beginning with some music by Ari Steger, and we're really thankful to Ari for being here. And Joe will read a prayer as well, and then some individuals who knew Margaret pretty well will share some fond memories of her. And there'll be some open time for others to share as well. After that, if other people want to speak or share any memories of Margaret, there'll be time for that. And then we'll have opportunity to adjourn for a potluck in our shelter over there, so some time to just spend some time with each other and share some food. So I want to thank the committee who helped to plan this event. Steve Senesi unfortunately couldn't be here today because one of his friends actually passed away yesterday. John Eflin will hopefully be here soon. He's at work still. And Wade Adams, who is here. And also want to thank the many individuals who contributed to help with the costs associated with the tree and the plaque. And those include, Pat Lynn, Kathy Murphy, Sarah Swick, Dave Steger, Wade Adams, Enocha Way, Tom Small, Mark Miller, Ruth Mordyke, Ron Kramer, Paula Allred, Harold Boy, Shadi Kanan, Phil Micklin, and in case I missed anyone, I apologize. Anyone else who contributed, we really appreciate, and KNOW contributed as well. So thank you all. And as I said, Steve Senesi couldn't be here, and he was bummed out about it, but he did write a haiku in honor of Margaret, and he wanted me to read it, so I will read it now. Courageous fighter, Margaret for peace and justice, and unending love. All right, so we're going to turn it over to Ari now.
Attempt to rig this up, maybe move here?
Yeah, where do you want the mic?
Right here.
Very high tech.
Yeah.
Oh, where's the on-off switch? Oops.
Is it on?
Yeah, but I'm taping over it. So.
You probably don't need to tape it that much.
Okay. Sorry about that noise.
Okay.
Is that a good thing? I like that. How we're going.
All right. Okay. Hopefully, can anyone hear me? Yes. Yes? Okay. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes. Silver white. Got it floating away a little. Oh, thank you. Rhodey is here with duct tape.
Yeah, maybe a little closer. Farther there.
Okay. All right. Stay back. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that turn into springs. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog barks, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad. Thank you.
Got it.
Throw it off while
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, everybody. I think I know most people here. Oh. Oh, that's right. Sorry. I'm just Rhodey. Here we go. Do you want to introduce her?
What I remember of Margaret is much what Amy already said, is that she always showed up. And when she had no ride, she would actually walk from where she lived to downtown. Amazing dedication and example for all of us. And in trying to come up with a prayer that would reflect this, the best I could do is a prayer written by Ken Untner, who was last before he died the leader of the Diocese of Saginaw. And it became famous as Romero's prayer, but that's a long story. And it just fits, I think, the occasion. So it goes. It helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that God's kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith and belief. No confession brings perfection. No program accomplishes the church's or the world's mission. No set of goals and objectives include everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water the seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces effects far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something. to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's grace to enter and to do the rest. We may never see the end result, but that is the difference between the master and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. Servants, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future that is not our own. Amen. And hopefully this tree will outlast many of us.
Thank you, Joe. That was a really fitting prayer and really inspiring. So next we're going to have people share memories of Margaret. And I want to say that I originally had asked Don Cooney to share a memory, and he was happy to do so, but then he realized he was going to be out of town, and he was really bummed he wasn't going to be here. But then he showed up after all because his trip was canceled. So he's going to share as well at the end of the list. I just felt bad that he wasn't in the program, but there's sort of people listed in order in the program, and then there's time after that for anyone else who would like to share any memories. So Dave is first on our list.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks to everybody who put this together. The songs that Ari singing were chosen by Margaret's family as a couple of her favorite songs. So wanted to relay that. And I spoke with Margaret's youngest child, Daniel, today, who asked me to pass along to you that he's sorry that he couldn't be here, and also his appreciation to those who worked on getting the tree here and organizing this memorial, and also his thanks to KNOW for KNOW's work and for all the organization has done and what it meant for his mom. I met Margaret many years ago at a KNOW Sunday vigil, like many of us, and as we got to know each other and became friends, my respect and admiration for her grew. She had an incredible spirit in pursuit of peace, justice, and truth. This spirit gave her the strength to always stand up and protest for what she believed in, to walk miles, as was said, to get to where she wanted to be, and to rehabilitate from major life events like falls and strokes, while somehow finding humor and joy along the way. Margaret, as we know, was not shy about expressing her opinions. I particularly remember and miss when she would call some injustice stupid, saying the word stupid in a way that conveyed how much she wanted that injustice out of her mouth, away from her, and forever gone. While she's dearly missed, I take some comfort in knowing that some of her amazing spirit carries on in all of us that knew her, and that this tree and plaque here are a beautiful and quiet place to come here and remember her. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Off. All right. I'm kind of glad to be second because we all share very similar memories of Margaret. And my memories were ones that I jotted down in just a few minutes. And I said, I'll go with these memories because they're honest. And so we all mentioned that she walked. Well, I call her the inveterate walker, in that not just that she walked from her house to the end of the street, Portage, to pick up the bus, but she would walk from the bus to wherever she had meetings and events and gatherings and concerts that she enjoyed, and Western or library or the churches downtown. And then she would sit right in the front. if she had a chance to sit right in the front, she would be there, paying full attention to what is going on and asking questions. So she must have had very strong legs, and she must have had good walking shoes. I imagine she couldn't have done all that walking without comfortable, sturdy shoes. And she stopped walking only when she couldn't anymore. When she was injured or when she had to be in rehab, she stopped. But then by choice, it was not by choice. Margaret exuded glamour, the glamour of a movie star. Her hair, silver hair, long wavy just so, a hat perched on her hair, dark glasses if it's sunny, a sculpted face that just looked beautiful, especially in pictures. She was so photogenic that I will always remember that of Margaret. She also, as already been mentioned, a strong appetite for reading and reading about politics and issues she cared about. She would bring copies of articles she cut out of magazines and newspapers to no meetings and would urge us to read them and talk about them with her. She was an incorrigible talker on issues she cared about. She showed strength and resilience when she was hit by a car as she was crossing the corner of Park and West and Michigan Avenue and was injured. I was frightened for her. I thought that was going to be the beginning of the end for Margaret, but not so. She recovered so quickly that when I saw her walking again, I just wondered, how does Margaret do it? I was just amazed at that strength and tenacity that she had. When she was disappointed and impatient with some of the ways we conducted no meetings, she let us know. And when we were trying to lead the meetings and keep them under control, trying to limit people's length of talking and not to talk out of turn, Margaret wasn't happy with that. One day she walked out of a meeting, really enraged. And I thought perhaps that was the end of Margaret in terms of KNOW, but no. She kept going as an activist. And it was that resilience and strength that I will always remember. So standing next to this tree, I think that the tree will always remind us of what an example she set for us, and may we water it with our memories of Margaret.
It's good to see all of you here. Not under these circumstances, but thank you very much, Amy, for all your efforts in setting up this wonderful memorial for Margaret. What I would like to say is, I remember, I have to credit my wife a lot for my being involved in the early days of KNOW. I remember coming home in late summer 2002 and Sandy excitedly saying she was at the Full City Cafe at the corner of Parkview and Wokeland that day, and she was sitting with Tom and Nancy Small, and Tom asked Nancy what she wanted to do for her birthday. And Nancy said, I want to go to the federal building and I want to protest because it looks like the United States wants to make war on Iraq. Well, it was only a week or two later, in those formative days of KNOW, that we met Margaret. And Sandy and I were so impressed with her knowledge. She was a walking, talking encyclopedia of information about the Middle East, about Iraq, about geopolitics, about the influence of oil on politics in the Middle East and the United States. And so we've always looked at Margaret as an educator. She was willing to educate anybody that was willing to listen. But there was something more about Margaret. When you think about it, in the late 1940s, she was from Park Ridge, Illinois, and a suburb of Chicago where Hillary Rodham grew up, who became Hillary Rodham Clinton, of course. But Margaret was obviously quite different than Hillary Rodham Clinton. There's another character that grew up in Park Ridge, and maybe Margaret fits that description better. His name is Harrison Ford, and he played Indiana Jones in the Indiana Jones series because he was an adventuresome person, and Margaret was obviously an adventuresome person. Otherwise, what young woman would have chosen to fall in love as an aspiring actress? She was an aspiring actress at the Chicago Institute of Art. Fall in love with an aspiring theater director from Iraq, knowing full well that he was going to be going back to Iraq. But they started their family, and I thought that Margaret was so interesting that when I heard that NPR, National Public Radio, was sponsoring a project called StoryCorps, my immediate thought was, when they were going to come to Kalamazoo, Margaret. I'm going to interview Margaret. It would be a 40-minute interview. Well, I was concerned. I kind of wanted to do it like Studs Terkel, that famous Chicago radio interviewer, who would make a few leading remarks and then let the guests talk. Well, I made a whole series of questions and wondered, well, will I be able to fill in that 40 minutes of time with those questions? Well, I walked into that booth where we did the interview, and I was very nervous, and it showed on the CD that eventually was produced. Margaret was cool as a cucumber, and she put me totally at ease, so I wasn't nervous anymore at all. That 40 minutes went by so fast, I swear we could have spent 2 more hours with that interview, and I'm so glad that I did it. So my request here of you is to follow in the shoes of Margaret. Be an educator, because she truly was an educator. Just like Professor Gary Dorian was an educator, teaching many of us about the neocons who brought us that Iraq War. So she taught us so much. And I'm so glad we have this bur oak here. The bur oak is one of the very few trees in the world that can withstand fire. Margaret could withstand fire. So stick by your ideals. If you receive fire, think of Margaret. Stand by your principles. And remember this tree. It can withstand fire. It is present in southern Michigan and was known by the early settlers of this area as the oak openings, because the only trees that lived in those areas was this tree, the bur oak. So let us hope it becomes a mammoth 400, 500-year-old oak. Thank you.
Thanks, Wade. That was good. Good job, Wade. We had to bring up our women in black. That's how I got into this, and Margaret was definitely part of that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Margaret's history that I think explains the character that she was. Amy had given me this information, and Shadia will follow with some specific stories. Margaret was born in the home of her doctor grandfather in Cassopolis on July 25, 1928. The early experience with her family's poverty in Park Ridge, Illinois, which Wade told you that she was there, that's where her parents lived. But during the Depression, she really suffered, the family suffered a great deal in terms of poverty. And being a middle child, she was the fifth of 10, I think explains a lot about her fierce independence, her pursuit of a theatrical career, falling in love with Jassim, a gracious and talented fellow drama student from Iraq, then leaving family to live with Jassim in Iraq, raising 7 sons and a daughter there, with the turmoil of revolution and war around her, which made her the outspoken opponent of war that I met as part of Women in Black, our sisterhood vigils on Sunday in front of the Federal Building and elsewhere. Margaret was blessed with a loving family with whom she would visit and travel all over the world. But when she had her fall, and much later a stroke, and had trouble managing at home, she refused to leave her house to live near them. So until Daniel, her youngest, came to stay, she relied on her KNOW friends to help her stay. Well, there was the problem of the neighbors, right? Who called the city to complain about the mess in her backyard, including the pool that had not been tended to for years. A few key KNOW folks attempted to clean the pool and yard, and later tried to help make the house livable for her return. Others will tell you about this, I'm sure. Margaret's extensive biography reveals that she had problems learning in elementary school. She spent a year in Cassopolis with her maternal grandparents when her Aunt Mary, who was a teacher, took her to WMU, which was known for its educational techniques, to help her with her dyslexia. But she made up for this, as many of you have said, in that she was an avid reader and supporter of the arts. And she clipped thousands, and others have said that, thousands of articles. But when her pipes froze and her basement flooded, KNO friends who helped her had to face piles of wet paper. When she was faced with Jassim's illness after he had to leave Iraq and lack of retirement benefits in the early 1980s, Margaret enrolled in WMU and threw herself into her studies despite tending to Jassim and Daniel. In early 1989, she graduated summa cum laude into two separate degree programs, a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology and a Bachelor of Social Work. She was Sociology Scholar of the Year. And despite her stellar academic achievements, she could not get a job. Having to deal with poverty again did affect her relationship with friends. Many helped her generously, which she accepted but also resented, and at times lashed out in frustration at this reliance on others, apologizing later. When after her stroke she was in a skilled nursing facility, her KNOW friends visited her, and she was always grateful for these visits. She apparently recovered enough to live in a house in Portage for a while with Daniel assisting. But after her second massive stroke, she spent 5 months at Rose Arbor and then her last 4 days at Butterfly Oasis, where she died on October 27, 2020, at the ripe old age of 92. Margaret will be remembered for her passionate support for those suffering discrimination and injustice, and her outspoken opposition to war. It is appropriate to honor her with a tree because Margaret loved trees, Shadia said. Shadia will reminisce more about our feisty, beautiful dreamer and friend who was part of our KNOW family. Margaret, we miss you. May you rest in peace.
Very good. Very good.
I'll hold this for you.
I want to make reference to the point that Chloe just made about Margaret's poverty and how she grew up in poverty. In my mind, over the years that I've known Margaret, she was a very rich woman. Rich with self-confidence, rich with her focus on the issues that meant a lot to her. She was also a beautiful woman. One time I invited her with few friends to the Black Swan when the Black Swan was open. And I asked her to bring a album of her pictures in her youth. And I swear to God, she looked like Grace Kelly. She's gorgeous.
She was.
How I met Margaret? In 2002, Gulnar Hussain, God rest her soul, invited few of us in the line when we stood in demonstrations on Southwest Michigan Avenue to protest the Israeli incursions in the West Bank. Gulnar, I met her for the first time when she went around the line inviting people to her house for a first meeting for peace and justice, which eventually turned out to become KNOW. There, I met Don Cooney, I met the Naglers, I met Noah, and I met a friend named Khalid Jamal. And Margaret by then had been standing with the Gumps in front of the Radisson Hotel every Tuesday afternoon protesting the sanctions against Iraq in the 90s. So even before all of the organization, whether it's Women in Black or the KNOW or the Interfaith Coalition, Margaret was active and standing for peace. I learned a lot from Margaret. Her life story was amazing. I gave her one time a cassette tape recorder and a huge box of cassettes. And I said, Margaret, talk in your recorder. Talk, tell your story. And it is a story worthwhile of telling. One anecdote from Margaret, that in 1967, when the war broke, she was at the office of Senator Robert Kennedy, in his office, complaining about something, I'm sure. So her self-confidence, her persona, it was her strong suit. Her independence. When she met Jassim, she told me, he wanted to direct me in a play. He ended up directing my life. And she went with him to Iraq, and she married him against her parents' wishes and approval.
Yeah.
That stubborn Margaret, who knew what she wanted and went after it. One anecdote I would like to end with is one day Margaret was nowhere to be found. Wade called me from somewhere. He said her sons are calling and no reply at home. Where is Margaret? I said, I don't know. By the way, I drove Margaret everywhere when I was in the country. I considered her my date. I took her everywhere, to the theater, to the movies, and to most KNOW meetings. But that day, they called me and they said, where is Margaret? So I went to her house and knocked and knocked and knocked, and no answer. I called one friend, he might be here, I don't know who that was, a tall friend, and I said, please climb the windows and peek through and see where Margaret is, you know. We were concerned. And then I called the Michigan News Agency, which was one of her major stops, getting papers and reading and reading. And I think they told me she was there, but that she went to the KIA for the Tuesday morning senior citizens meeting, which she never missed, and I had forgot. So Margaret was everywhere. She was talented in everywhere. And as we were driving to places, there was one tree in town that she always pointed to as her favorite tree. So this is reminiscent of Margaret's love of nature and trees, and she will be greatly missed. Thank you.
One more very quick thing that Shadia made me remember in the biography was a story about how she pursued Jassim, actually. He walked her to the train in the rain and under an umbrella, and as Margaret went to the train, she turned and kissed him. He was so flabbergasted that a big wind came along and turned the umbrella upside down, and he went chasing after it, I guess, and all he got was a broken umbrella handle, but he, from then on, used to tell the children about how they met and how their romance started.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much for those wonderful memories. Thank you so much for sharing those wonderful memories. John was going to speak next, but I don't think he's here yet. So Don, do you want to come on up?
Margaret Al-Oboudi was a force of nature. She was a woman of courage. She was a woman of principle. She feared nothing, and she was going to let everybody know what she thought. When I think of her, I tried to think about what would encompass what I think of Margaret. And I thought about the great labor leader who recruited people to stand against the draft in the First World War. And when he was standing before the judge, about to be sentenced, he said, "Your Honor, long ago I recognized my solidarity with all humankind. Where there are people in poverty, I am with them. When there are oppressed people, I am among them. When there is a soul in prison, I am not free." And that's how Margaret lived. She cared deeply about every single person. And I think it's so fitting that we honor her today when the Afghan situation is taking place, which shows the absurdity and the destruction and the inhumanity of war. That's what No has fought against. I remember back after 9/11 when a group of us in the community stood against the war in Afghanistan We joined with a group called Peaceful Tomorrows, and we said, not in our name. No more blood. We have to find a way other than blood. And Margaret stood right with us in that struggle. So today, as we honor Margaret, and I walk my dog through this park every day, and it will be such a treat for me to come and look at this tree and remember my beloved friend Margaret. So I think the best way that we can honor her is by carrying on the work that she gave her life to. And so I want to close with the words of Ted Kennedy, which I think apply so much to us today. The work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream will never die. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. That was really inspiring. Luckily, Don Eflin, who helped plan this event, was able to make it after all, so he's going to go ahead and share some memories as well.
Thank you, Amy. Great to see all of you here this afternoon. Hearing the end of what Don was talking about, I'm not going to be anywhere in that ballpark as far as memories go, but for me, I guess what I wanted to share was just, and maybe some of the rest of you have done this too, where I happened to meet Margaret just by accident along the way as we were doing things with No, and she was my first real friendship with someone of a different generation that was older than me, and this was like 2006, 2007, 2008, and we just fell in together. We would talk at the vigils, and then it kind of migrated to her house, where I would visit her kind of on a semi-regular basis when she lived over on Palmer Street, and we would just sit and talk about things, and it was mainly her talking because I wanted to milk her for all she had, because I knew she was a woman full of wisdom and joy and love. And she turned me on to a great book from a great journalist, The Bright Shining Lie. She lent me her copy, written by Neil Sheehan, who died this past year. He wrote a remarkable book about the Vietnam War, and we spent a lot of time talking about that. I eventually got my own copy of the book, and but we would just, I remember sitting in her living room, and she'd be at one end and I'd be at the other, and I would just hear her talk about what it was like growing up in Park Ridge, where I grew up, and I found that out after the fact. We knew some of the same places and schools and churches and so forth, and I was just kind of in amazement at how down to earth she was about this remarkable life that she had led and was still living in all these different parts of the world, and the kind of family that she had, both growing up as well as the family she created with her husband. And I guess I'll finish with just something I know Dave did. Dave Steger had a similar kind of experience now and then, where he'd see Margaret walking around downtown, and we just it was like a natural thing to just pull over if we were driving and give her a ride wherever she was going, whether it was home or not. But she was always out there on the street, it seemed, walking, whether it was raining, snowing, or a day like today. And she was just a humble, gracious human being who gave me all the time in the world to me. I never felt like she was on a schedule. She was, I don't know, she was in the right place at the right time for me. That's all I know. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, John. It's been really great to hear everybody's had something unique to add, and it's been really wonderful. We have some open time now. Someone else wants to come and share some memories?
So I first met Margaret when her son Daniel was in my astronomy class at Loy Norrix High School, which is right over here. And of course, she came to parent-teacher conferences, and she sat down, introduced herself, and like 15 minutes later, I had the whole family story from the beginning, and the being in Iraq, and the names of all of her kids, and the whole story. So that was well before, that was in the 90s. It was well before KNOW existed or before the invasion of Iraq. And I have many, many memories since, including echoing what we've already heard. Margaret sitting in a KNOW meeting and saying, well, she had a streak of impatience, which was related to her passion for justice. And as the group got off on a kind of a tangent going off over here, and she said, but what about Iraq? Others have alluded to the later years when she was trying to keep up her home, and some of us assisted in that. I was doing some yard work and some cleaning out of the swimming pool when her other son, Nabil, showed up. He had been living in Texas, and he was a construction guy. So he knew how to build things, and he also needed some money at that point. My wife and I hired him to do some work at our house, put in some windows, rehab one whole room. And I got to know him. And then I saw a different side of this family and the struggles that they had gone through, the experiences in Iraq, including being in the army that Nabil had experienced. And really, it deepened my knowledge of some of the family and of Margaret's experience as well. I'll just, echo many of the things that have been said. I treasure my memories of her as an example of a warrior for peace.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anybody else? Yeah, Carrie.
Hello. Of course, I gave Margaret many rides also, so I understand the joy and the sometimes the pressure. One of the things that I keep thinking about when I think of Margaret now, a few years ago there was an NPR interview with an older man who had been in the military in World War II, and he shared with the audience, he said, they call us the greatest generation. We're not the greatest generation. The greatest people are the people that work to stop war. That's our Margaret.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. Anybody else want to share? All right, Bob.
One time Margaret told me about when she got a chance to meet Senator Robert Kennedy, and she heard him assuring some supporters that he would not press the Israelis to get out of the occupied territories. And Margaret said, "You have no right to give away that land." And the aides came to her and said, "The senator is very busy. The senator is very busy."
Thanks for sharing that, Bob. Yeah, it's so great to hear all these memories. Anybody else? Share any memories? Okay. Anybody else? One more? Okay. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to hear all these unique memories. And just to, yes.
Can I just make a couple announcements?
Absolutely.
Very quickly. Two things. First, that I brought a whole lot of paper plates and utensils and things that I'm hoping that somebody at KNOW will take for future potlucks. The other thing is, I think Dr. Saeed Abubakar and I both brought some postcards which are in support of HR 2590. And mine all have postcard stamps on them. I'm hoping that you will take some, and we are going to take at least 50 to Upton, but I'm hoping that you will spread them across the country to anybody that you know, because there were 330 representatives who've already written a letter saying that they totally support Israel and they don't support 2590. So they need to hear. They need to hear. We need to do the best we can to let everybody know that there's no way to treat a child as they're doing with our money in Israel. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for announcing that, Loie. Yeah, we do have those cards on the table there, so you're welcome to fill one out if you haven't yet, and then also to, pass them on to other people. So thank you again. It's been so great to hear all these memories. I really appreciate everyone turning out for this. We're going to get to hear one more song by Ari, and then we can adjourn to the potluck and share some food together and some visiting. Thank you.
See if we can read that a little better.
I think we can do worse. Maybe not on the thing, too.
Yeah. Are you still holding it?
Yep.
Yeah. See if I can maybe get.
That's
Yeah.
berries.
Okay. Great there.
I think one more underneath. Okay.
Okay. It should hold.
I don't know if it's on.
No. Right. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I... We getting feedback? Okay. There's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind. Ooh. Sorry about that. Thank you. I think we're okay. I don't know. Someday I'll wish upon. Yeah, I could maybe turn it down.
Okay.
Is that? Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think that might be good. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt. Can we hear me? I'll just play without the mic. Okay. Where troubles smell like lemon drops, oh, way above the chimney tops, that's where you'll find me. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, sky blue birds happy little bluebirds fly above the rainbow. Why, oh, why can't I?
Okay.
Yeah.
Aw. Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Ari. It was so nice of you to share your music with us. We really appreciate it. And we could go ahead and adjourn to the... Oh, thanks so much to Ari. Let's give Ari a round of applause, another round of applause. David asked if there's any way he could help, and I said, do you happen to know anyone who might be able to play music? And I was thinking about Ari, but I didn't want to ask directly. He said, I'll ask Ari. So thank you, Ari. That really made it more special. We really appreciate it. So wonderful to see you all. Let's adjourn and have some yummy food.